Welcome in, Big Blue Nation, to a winning episode of the Cats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Johnston. This is your other host, Tyler Britton. The Kentucky Wildcats pull into Kroger Field this weekend in front of 62,000 fans and get the win 41-6. Parents weekend, I saw a lot of fans, even for the noon game. A lot of drunk fans, they got out, they tailgated early. I was one of them. I did not get to partake in the tailgating. I was still a tad hungover from the birthday celebrations the night prior. But it was good to see these Wildcats roll in and get the win. Tyler, what'd you think about the Cats taking down your alma mater?
First of all, can we back up for a second here, Cam? Let's go ahead and talk about your night before. What happened the night before? Were you even awake for the game here? Tell us about that experience.
It was a little hot. I was a little sweaty. I was fighting some nausea, but I was up there cheering on my Cats. I was by a bunch of Bobcats fans, actually. I guess I was near the alumni section for Ohio. But me, my dad, and my mom stuck it through. They weren't hungover, but boy, I was hungover for the three of us. But yeah, birthday celebrations got a little wild. Getting back to the Cats, Tyler, what'd you think about your alma mater coming into Kroger Field and taking a loss?
All right, shots taken here. I appreciate it. Thanks for starting off the podcast strong here, Cam. Yes, the Wildcats won. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back in the winning column here. Thank goodness for the Wildcats. Unfortunately, it was against my alma mater, the Bobcats. I have a bone to pick with them on a different podcast at a different time. However, for this podcast and the sake of this show, we're excited to see the Wildcats back in the winning column. Look, I think the important thing here, Cam, from what I was taking from this game, the Wildcats did exactly what we said they should do last week. We said last week they need to go out there. They need to be more aggressive. This is their game to really feel themselves out and be really, play some football here. They've been playing against a couple tough teams. They had a tough game against the Gamecocks a couple weeks ago. They played a tough team in Georgia last week. This was their opportunity to come in here and really put some stats up on the board. And I don't think they necessarily disappointed. I think they did exactly what I expected them to do against the Bobcats, which go in there and put a lot of stats up here. I mean, look, they put up 282 yards passing from Brock. I thought that was pretty good from him. Average about 10.4 yards per pass. Rushing was also just as good as it has been all year. 206 yards total on 41 attempts. Low on the yards per carry, I think. Only 5 yards per carry, but against the Bobcats, I felt like that should have been a little bit higher. But I think overall, I can't be really mad about the offensive performance. And then the defense, we saw the score. It was only 6 points, so I'm happy with the stats on there. But, Cam, you were at the game here. You, as hungover as you were still enjoying yourself. Tell us what you saw from start to finish. What did you think of the players on the field? What did you think about post-game? Tell us about your experience. I want to hear about it.
Yeah, fan experience-wise, it's a little disappointed. Kentucky fans, that stadium went from 62,000 at the start of the game to maybe 25,000 at halftime. I know we were expected to, come in here and roll over the Bobcats pretty easily like we did. But at the end of the first quarter, this was a 3-0 game. So to see the fans kind of take off, that early, I don't know if it's the confidence that they had in the team to, roll around and win this game. That was the only disappointing part of my experience at the game. But like you said, offensively, the Cats came in. We wanted to see him. I would personally want to see him take some more deep shots. Dane Key was amazing in this game. He had 145 yards receiving. I'm still trying to figure out where we're going to get our passing yards from if it's not Dane Key at the moment. Right now, it's a struggle to kind of get burying the ball in space. It seems like anytime we are getting the ball, it's a jet sweep, a jet pass, a bubble pass, a screen, something of that nature. And right now, he's not really warranting him getting the ball more. I mean, he had the jet sweep for a touchdown this week, but he had 3 before then that went for negative yards to 3 yards, I believe. So trying to figure out how this offense is going to be able to score points to keep them in games is still a question, even though they did put up 41 this week.
Yeah, I think there would be some value to stretching the field a little bit more. Obviously, you can stretch that defense a little bit more, especially as you get into some of these tougher games. We'll talk about Ole Miss a little bit later here. I think there's some benefits to that. However, I'm not opposed to controlling the ball. I think again, this was a team that we were supposed to just be a little more methodical with, and I thought we were able to do that, especially down the stretch once we got comfortable. I don't think we can wait as long when we're playing a team like Ole Miss, Georgia, or some of these other SEC teams. I think we do need to start a little bit sooner on having some more methodical drives and getting down the field, scoring some touchdowns early. But if we're doing a little more sweeps to stretch the defense out instead of passing yards, as long as it's opening up the run game, especially down the stretch here, I think that's okay with me. Look, Brock Vandagriff put up 237 yards by himself here. He had a 79.1 QBR. Went 17 for 24 here. I think it's a solid game. Not great. I don't think it's gonna prove himself against SEC teams, but I think it's a start. It's exactly what I was looking for in this Ohio Bobcats game. At least get some jump started, get ready for a team like Ole Miss here. Cam, why don't you go ahead and talk about Brock Vandagriff here? You saw him live and in person here. This is your first time seeing Brock in person. Why don't you tell us about what you saw from Brock Vandagriff here?
Yeah, second time seeing him in person. Just first time for an actual game that counts and matters. Watched him in the spring game over the summer, even though they call it the spring game. But yeah, Brock, he's kind of just proving everything that we know about him now. His decision-making is still slow. It's still his processing. It's really not there at the moment. Right now, he can't go from read to read and expect him to be able to make completions like that. Like I said, against Ohio, you can go from, I'm going to look at my first option, my second option, then check it down. Against Ole Miss, against Georgia, against South Carolina, like you see, that is not how that's going to work. He has to get faster about deciphering defenses. And then when you get him outside of the pocket on design runouts, design rollouts to the right, you can see how comfortable he is, because usually on those design rollouts you have 1 to 2 options that you're probably looking at the max, and then you're tucking and running if they're not there. So while we can't just always do rollouts just to fit his scheme and what he's best at, I will like to see more of those throughout the season against these better opponents, especially with Dane Key running on the side. Maybe do a little bunch formation over there with Dane and Berrien. Have Berrien as your deep threat. Dane kind of that reliable, 10 to 15 yard guy that he's been throughout the season. I'm looking forward to more stuff like that with this offense. I think that's probably where Brock is at his best. Offensive line was okay this week. Nothing. I think we kind of know what they are. They're really not going to be able to sit there and hold in pass protection without some sort of help, without getting Brock on the run, without a check down option, without a little safety valve somewhere in there. So that was my takeaway from Brock. Really, it's the same thing that we've been saying for the past 3 weeks.
Do you think that we've been saying that Brock's decision-making has been a little bit slow, and it shows a little bit more against some of these better teams here. I'm thinking Georgia, to an extent, the Gamecocks here. And we saw him play decent against the Bobcats here. Are we utilizing him the right way? Is our offense geared around Brock Vandagriff, or are we still trying to figure him out here? What's the future looking like for Brock? What's going to make him successful? Where are we at right now?
Yeah, obviously, a better pass-protecting offensive line will make him a lot better. If he's got time to sit in there, he's shown the arm strength and the accuracy to be able to make these passes. It's just he's not ready to sit there and decipher defenses in 2 to 2.5 seconds, which is the time he's been getting. We watched the Washington Commanders just pick apart the Bengals defense yesterday. Jaden Daniels, on average, had 3.1 seconds per attempt thrown. And that's in the NFL. We can't. I think right now Brock's getting 2.4 for a clean pocket. That's normally the NFL numbers. Those numbers are reversed. So I think Brock will be fine if we can pass protect around him, but I don't see that happening. So design rollouts, screens. The only bad thing is really the quick game really isn't working right now. We're not breaking those tackles. It's kind of same thing with the running backs as well. We're getting into the same spot where we're having those 10 to 12 yard runs where if we make the safety miss, it's a 50-yard gain. It's a touchdown. We're missing those big chunk plays that we haven't been able to get with this offense. I'm hoping that's just a, ball not bouncing the right way type scenario, or a shoestring tackle, great play by the defender, because we have played two great defenses and then obviously two not very good defenses. So I'm really hoping, potentially Chip coming back, that adds in a little bit this week. Hopefully, we start to make more guys miss in the open field because right now I feel like Bush is actually getting Barry in and getting Dane and getting some of those guys in open field where we just got to make one guy miss and it's a house call.
I think we've mentioned Brock's running ability so far this year. He's been athletic. He's run the ball a little bit. My question is, so kind of gearing the offense around him, you've talked about giving him more time. Our run game's been fine. Would putting in a little bit more RPO to help with the quick passing game, would that help our offense? Would that help Brock, in your opinion?
I'm not sure Brock's confident enough in doing it at the moment. He seems just a little skittish. Like even against Ohio, there was times where he's just like he's not really sure of himself at the moment. And we've been running RPOs, but it seems like for the most part, he's been making the wrong reads on a good amount of them. But like I said, Demi has been great. This offensive line's actually been able to run block outstandingly. Like we ran for over 200 yards against Georgia. Like that's insane. No matter what Kentucky team. Kentucky's usually known for being able to run block since Mark Stoops has been here. And I couldn't tell you a single time where we had 200-plus rushing yards on Georgia. And that was without your number one running back and your backup, and Jason Patterson. So, we're able to run the ball. I think we've shown that. Right now, it's just being able to find that consistency, being able to find basically just plan B to where, let's say, we only get 1 yard on first down. What can we do in 2nd and 9 to maybe get us in a third and manageable where we could run the ball again? That's the biggest problem with the offense at the moment.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I'm thinking if we can somehow help out with those short passing game you were mentioning, that was our kind of our weak spot right now. I would love to see more effective RPO. I think just based on the skill set, the run game's already doing well. If we can do that a little bit better, maybe that caters in. Maybe that just needs a little more practice. I don't know what it takes, but I think that could help because that can get us to the 3rd and 4s, the 3rd and 3s. Maybe worst case scenario gets us down to a 4th and 2, 4th and 1, which is depending on what part of the field you're on and what part of the game you're in, might make it a little bit more feasible to go for it on 4th down versus getting stuck there on 3rd and 9. Now if you know if you don't get any yards, you're punting on 4th down. I think that could help. But like you said, I think the run game's doing pretty well as well. We had 206 yards rushing on Saturday here. Some good game overall. Just I think it was well-rounded throughout the team. 5 yards of rush here, 4 touchdown rushes. Cam, what did you see in the run game on Saturday?
Yeah, like I said, it seems like we're always one missed tackle away from that 50, 60-yard touchdown run that we haven't gotten yet this season. And I think that would have been, a very nice thing to see because we still haven't had a chunk play really in this running game. Even though it had, as good as it has been, we haven't had that, Demi's gone to the house for a 40-yard gain. We haven't had any sort of explosive run game like that. It's been very consistent and reliable, like we mentioned. But hopefully, maybe with Chip coming back, you can't just hand Chip Trainum the job, though. Demi's earned the carries that he's getting. Jamarion Wilcox has played very well in the time that he's gotten. Jason Patterson, before his injury, is playing really well as well. So, I think good thing to come out of this Chip injury was the fact that now you've got 4 running backs that you kind of feel good with giving them the ball at any time. Hopefully it's just, once we get to that second level, we can make those guys miss and turn those, 7 to 8 yard gains or 10 to 12 yard gains into house calls rather than just, keeping the sticks moving. Instead, put points on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I think that could be beneficial for us as we move forward into some of these games. We're going to get some talent back on the field. I think we can go into more of a back by committee. I'm not saying give someone a full-time job here. Demi has earned his reps. I think he can continue to get his reps. But doing a little bit more back by committee, I think that will prove fruitful if our O-line can continue to do what it's doing on the run game. Our running backs can continue to run like they've been running. I think come 3rd and 4th quarter, that'll come really beneficial. I think of the Georgia game, if we could have just kept running that ball down their throats a little bit, especially 3rd, 4th quarter, they're getting worn out. I'm thinking of some of these teams who that does lead to a breakout run where now instead of a 23-yard long run against the Bobcats, maybe it was a 55, 60-yard run because the defense is worn down in the second half. Obviously, a different game with this game being, a distant game, 41-6 versus the Georgia game. But I'm thinking Ole Miss. What if it's a close game there? What if we're playing them well? We're running the ball well, and we can break one out loose. That could be very helpful. It keeps our passing game to a minimum, which has been our weak spot. I think if we're playing well on the run game, that'll really feed into our defense here, which kind of showed again on Saturday against the Bobcats here. Again, we had another good run game. I felt like that played well into the defense here. Cam, what did you see from our defense on Saturday?
Yeah, this defensive unit, it's going to be a top 10, top 15 unit by the end of the season. They've been great outside of maybe that quarter and a half with South Carolina when everything was just going weird and they forced 3 fumbles but, couldn't fall on one of them somehow. Like, we're looking at that South Carolina game as their worst game and they still forced 3 fumbles and, we gave them the ball multiple times. So this defense it's top tier, one of the best that Stoops has had. But so like you said, how do you make a great defense even better? A good running game, limit their possessions that they're going to get. I mean, Deion Walker is a stud, we know. Maxwell Hairston had a pick 6 in this game. I mean, just baited the Ohio quarterback right into that pick 6. It was great to see. A great kid, great family. Got to meet them after the game, talking about the personal experience. Got that jersey signed over the weekend. I was repping the 31. I know he switched to the number 1 now, but, still had to get that one signed. That way he knows, OG fan. I didn't wait for him to become the household name. I've had this bad boy. So to Max and Max Sr., great meeting you guys. Great family. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us after the game. But getting back to the defense in general, J.Q. Hardaway on the other side has been phenomenal. Max's running mate at corner 2. We talked at the beginning of the season, we were kind of concerned about cornerback 2 because nobody had really proven anything, and it was kind of a 3-way battle between J.Q., Jansen, and DJ Waller. So seeing J.Q. come out and just lock down that spot like it's his, that's good to see through week 4. Really, there's no complaints to be had about this defense. They've been good on every single level. De'Aaron Jackson and Pop Dumas Johnson have been amazing, as written, what you thought they were going to be. We weren't sure about the other defensive linemen outside of Deion Walker, but Trayvon Ripka's been great. J.J. Weaver's made splash plays. Even though he has 11 fingers, he can't scoop up a fumble in the open field. I'm still not sure what it is about that. I think he gets a little nervous. I think he saw a lot of green turf in front of him, followed by a big blue end zone. So he kind of slipped up and just had to end up falling on it. But this defense, Ole Miss will be a different challenge, and we'll get into that a little bit later with Jackson Dart. But I don't expect this defense to be the one to let us down.
Yeah, I'm in agreement here, Cam. I thought the defense played well. And look, I think you brought up a good point here. Max baited that quarterback. I think the quarterback threw the ball a little bit late on that play to the flats. But the defense did exactly what it's supposed to do. They capitalized off the mistake. That's what defense is nowadays. I feel like the game is so scientific and systematic. You're waiting for that mistake. We just haven't really capitalized it in the bigger games here. This was the first time where I felt like we capitalized on the mistakes, as we should have against the Bobcats. I think if we continue to do that in the future here, that will be very helpful for us. And I think the run game does go into that a little bit. You mentioned keep the best kind of defense is keeping our defense off the field. If we can continue to do that against some of these better competition teams, that'll really help our defense. Our defense is already set. It's already primed to do really well. But keeping that defense off the field, we kept the ball for 33 minutes for the game. They, to the 26 minutes for the Bobcats here. I think that'll really play fruitful here in the future with some of these better teams. If we can keep that about 50-50 or more so in our favor, that'll be very helpful down the road here. So excited for that. But why don't you dig in a little bit more with your experience with Max and his family here? How cool was it to hang out with him a little bit after the game? You had your family there. You guys were talking a little bit back and forth. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable family. I was sitting there, me and my parents, we were in the upper bowl to start the game, but like I had mentioned, crowd kind of thinned out after halftime, so we went down, sat somewhat near the family section towards the end of the game. And I'm sitting there with my jersey on. Guy just comes up beside me. Hey, man, I love that jersey. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, man, I got it. And then a couple weeks he changed his number. I was like, so now I got to get the new one. And then I look at he's got the number 1 Max Hairston jersey. I'm like, but yeah, well, I love that. I love that jersey. We're 2 biggest fans here. And then I start thinking about it a little bit more as the game ends. I'm like, I'm near the family section. He's wearing a Maxwell Hairston jersey. It's probably part of the family. I'm not. luckily, I ended up seeing him a little later after the game. They had that little catwalk to go to the locker room and all that stuff. Saw him. I had him sign my jersey. Got some pictures of it. Met and talked. Him and my dad talked. I mean, it was just. This is why Kentucky football is fun. There's that one-on-one experience that you can have with these guys. There's accessibility, and I don't know if anybody deserves what he's gotten more than Max does. Great guy. I mean, it's just classy family. Least I can say.
Look, I remember being in college, and the game's kind of turning into a game, 41-6 type game, and I remember fans leaving the game a little bit early. This just goes to show you never know who you're going to meet. If you stick around a little bit, you might meet some cool people. That was a really cool experience for you there, Cam. Hopefully someday we can get Max and his family on the pod. That's a future down the road thing. Maybe you can break down some game highlights for us. That'd be really cool. But why don't we transition here? We've talked about the Bobcats game long enough here, but why don't we talk a little bit about next week? We got some big competition going up against Ole Miss here. They have some good stats, which don't favor us too much. They're going to be you got the number 1 quarterback in passing yards with Jackson Dart here. 1,500 yards, Cam. It's a lot of yards going into the season versus Brock, who's only about 550 here. What are we looking at from Ole Miss here? What's our biggest concerns going into the game?
Yeah, Jackson Dart, one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, if not the country. It's his 3rd year starting in that Ole Miss offense with Lane Kiffin. They know what they want to do. They're an up-tempo offense. They want to establish the run. They lost Quinshon Judkins in the transfer portal, so they're still working out a little bit of kinks in that running game, even though their numbers are still phenomenal. But that helps when you play the likes of Furman and Wake Forest and Middle Tennessee State. You play teams like that, it's easy to kind of stat pad those numbers. It's kind of like our games against Southern Mississippi and Ohio. If we had 4 games that looked like that, we would roll in 4-0 with a higher powered offense than we think about as well. But Jackson Dart, he is as advertised. Hopefully, like we said, our defense, I don't think either of us lose any sleep at night thinking about this defense. Great defensive line, 2 great corners on the outside, and 2 solid, reliable linebackers. The only thing I'm worried about is keeping them on the field too long, especially with this up-tempo offense that's just going to keep running and gunning. We like to substitute. We like to get different guys in the game. You don't want to see Deion Walker on the field for 100% of the snaps because he's not going to give 100% of his effort. He's just too big of a guy to sit there and have him play every snap. You want to keep guys like that fresh. How do you keep them fresh? We've got to keep that offense on the field. Our offense has got to stay on the field. That's the only way I'm worried about this defense going in. I mean, it's crazy to say that's the only way I'm thinking that they're going to score a good amount of points on us when they are, have the most yards in college football. But this defense has earned that confidence.
Yeah, to your point there, I think that I've talked to a lot of people before about this, and how do you stop a high-powered offense? How do you keep the yards down, the time of possession down? Well, the best way to do that, I think, is through the run game here. I think we really need to rely on that run game. I don't think we need to be too flashy. That's why I was thinking the Bobcats game wasn't necessarily a bad thing. We weren't stretching the field necessarily downfield or anything like that, but we were keeping it within the means of play here. I think, obviously, it's the Bobcats versus Ole Miss here, but I think if we can duplicate that somehow, if we can take the same principles that we learned from this past game here and throw it into a game plan for Ole Miss here, hang on to that ball, drain the clock, run the defense, keep their defense on the field, get them tired. Again, more fresh faces on the running game here. Just keep hammering away, and I think they'll play fruitful, especially in the second half. That would be the best way, in my opinion, that we can get through this game here. Mix that in with some good defensive play. Obviously, we're going to need to heighten up a little bit on defense just to play against a better team than we did last week. But look, I think it's possible that we can put up some decent points. I'm not saying 50 or anything like that. I'm not saying we're going to get 41 like we did last week. But I think it's very, very reasonable to think that we can get anywhere between 14 and 25 points. I know it's a big spread, but a couple touchdowns here, I think that gets us in a really good spot to play. We did pretty good, I think, against Georgia here, all things considered. I think we can duplicate that against Ole Miss and slow down that team. But Cam, as we go into next week here, it's going to be 11 a.m. kickoff here. It's going to be early for the boys here. It's going to be the earliest game of the season so far. What do we need to do? What's going to be the game plan going into this game against Ole Miss?
Yeah, I think a fast start is going to be really important. Oxford is known as kind of like that party college town. So what do you do to kind of disrupt that crowd? How about, a 12-play, 70-yard drive where you just milk the clock, take about 7 minutes off, where you just drain them physically. Like you were talking about, run the ball down their throats. Get up 7-0. The crowd comes into the game. They finally get into the game. They show up a little late because, they were trying to get their last couple of minutes of tailgating in, and they show up, and they're like, what's going on? It's the first quarter is almost over, and we're down 7 to Kentucky already. I think fast start is going to be one of the biggest keys to this game. Getting a fast start, hitting Ole Miss in the mouth. They haven't been tested yet. They've played Furman, Middle Tennessee State, Wake Forest. I mean, these guys, they have not played SEC caliber team yet, even close. Wake Forest is terrible, and that's the best team that they've played. So coming out here, showing them, hey, you're back into SEC football. But then they get the ball first, 3 and out, quick stop, something like that, quick score. For me, it's all about a quick start, kind of taking the fight to them rather than just sitting there and being the reactionary ones.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we can get that fast start here, milk the clock a little bit, take the crowd out of it before they even get started. Let those college kids go back to their partying. I think that'll help tremendously here. It's going to be a really big road challenge here. We're going on the road. Is this our first road game? Feels like our first road game. It's our first road game.
Yep.
There's gonna be some jitter, especially from some of those younger guys. But I think this is gonna be a good test for Brock. But I think I think we can keep it close. I think we can manage it. This is an opportunity for us to manage this game. Let's go in there. Let's manage it. Let's play. Let's not. I don't think we need to be flashy. We don't need to take the deep shot downfield unless it's given to us. I don't think we need to take the deep shot early. But if we can just go down that field methodically, get a quick score, get a second quick score. We'll go from there. Let's play a closer game, but manage that clock a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the recipe for a Kentucky win. If you're wanting Kentucky to go into Oxford and beat the number 5 team in the nation, the recipe is to run the football effectively and keep our offense on the field and keep their offense off. We got faith in this defense as long as they're not gassed. I think that was part of the problem with that South Carolina game. They started getting gassed. They were on the field the entire game. We had so many 3 and outs, took so many sacks, so many negative plays. They were on the field the whole time. I think that's where, that one lapse for this team happened, was when they were gassed. So keep them fresh, keep them off the field as much as you can. That's the recipe for Kentucky staying in this game and being able to, go punch for punch with the number 5 team in the nation on your first road game in the season.
What's going to be our biggest hurdle to get over on our side of the ball? What do we need to do to make sure we're not getting held back? We're not falling into a slump. We're not doing what we did against the Gamecocks or against Georgia and falling behind. What do we need to do?
You just got to stay ahead of the chains. You can't get into first down plays. They can't be negative. You can't go into 2nd and 8s, 3rd and 6s. You can't put yourselves in obvious passing situations where their edge rushers can just tee off on your tackles or tee off on your guards. You can't put yourselves in those obvious passing downs. So staying ahead of the chains, getting into like 2nd and 5s, 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s, staying a game like that is how they're going to win this game. And I think if they can do that, they got a real shot of coming out of Oxford with a win. And then you're looking at this team completely different than after you did against that South Carolina game. You're looking at a very narrow loss at number 1 team in the nation, and you're talking about potentially upsetting the number 5 team in the nation on the road. And then you have a bye week to collect your thoughts, and then you and I will be in town to watch them kick the crap out of Vandy.
I can't wait for that, Cam. Look, I can't wait for next weekend, too. Ladies and gentlemen, this will be the first time that Cam and I are watching the game together on Saturday here. Cam, you got a chance to watch them live and in person this past weekend here. Why don't you go ahead and give us your prediction here? They're going against the number 1 defense in points allowed at 5.5 points per game here. It's going to be a tough battle. What's your prediction? How many points are you giving us? What's your outcome?
Yeah, I'm going to... I love to be the optimistic guy, and, more than likely, I do. I am the optimistic guy. I think Ole Miss does narrowly beat this Kentucky team. I do think we keep it close, but again, I think the offense is what hampers us. And I do think it's going to come down to some decision-making from the coaching staff. We've seen in back-to-back weeks, indecisiveness from Bush to Mark Stoops. They don't really have that trust in each other yet when it comes to, hey, it's 4th and 3. We're going for this, and then 4th and 3, we're kicking it. Oh, no, we got to delay a game. Now we're going for it. It's 4th and 7. Same thing with Georgia 2 weeks ago, taking that delay game and then punting it and getting the ball back with only 20 seconds. So I got Kentucky losing by 3. I think it's going to be a final score of 20-17. And I got a feeling we might have most of that scoring for us is probably going to come off this defense, either forcing fumbles and giving our offense the ball in plus territory, or maybe it's Max breaking a Kentucky record with his 4th pick 6 and setting a new University of Kentucky record, which that would be a sick way to win this game.
Cam, I'm very proud of you. You had a big boy moment here. You finally gave the respect to our offense here. Remember a couple of weeks ago, you weren't doing that same respect.
Hey,
very proud of you for that.
Hey, I said they would score 10, and they scored 12, so it's not like I was far off.
I give you respect. I was the optimistic one. You were shaming them, but I guess you were closer to the score than I was. I think I put them in the 30s. I don't know. It was bad. It was bad prediction on my end. Look, this week's gonna be better. I'm gonna have a better prediction this week. I'm gonna keep it close as well. I think the Wildcats here. I think this is their week to overcome some hurdles. They got some confidence under their belt from last week. They figured some things out. I don't think they're SEC champions all of a sudden overnight, but I think they're gonna play a little bit better ball. I think it's gonna be a little bit of a higher scoring game though. I'll be told, just because of the Ole Miss offense there. This will be the first competition though, for the first real competition that Ole Miss has had. So I think this will catch them by surprise a little bit with a few things we're doing. I'm going to give a final score of 24 Wildcats and Ole Miss will have 27. Again, a field goal game here, but I'm going to give it a little bit closer game, give an extra touchdown for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I think the higher the scoring game, the worse it is for Kentucky's odds of winning this game. So I'd love to win it like a little 7-3 bloodbath. 7-3, that's fine with me. Guess what? Offense, you did enough. If it's 7-3, we win the game. So I think the least amount of points scored in this game, the better it's going to be in Kentucky's favor. I think if we get in more of like that shootout, like you said, of like this total scoring getting into the 50s, I think that's where we start to, or at least me personally, I start to lose confidence in this offense being able to keep up and score like that.
Well, Cam, when we're together next Saturday here, we're going to figure out what kind of night we're going to have based on the outcome here. So I'm excited to see what we have going on. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in for yet another week of Cats Talk Podcast. We're here every single week breaking down the game, breaking down the previous game, talking about the next game. If you have anybody that you know of who likes the Wildcats football, maybe people who just don't know about football and need to learn about football, have them subscribe, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star rating. We'd love to hear your feedback, get you guys on the podcast later on. We'll be here next week. Tune in for a recap of next week's game.
Go Big Blue.